Of all the ways that we consider time in the Montessori classroom, the 3-hour work cycle is one of the most important units. The work cycle represents one of Montessori's earliest observations about children's development, that left uninterrupted, children would process through a regular and predictable pattern of engagement. The pace of the classroom then is ideally matched to the development of the child, when the day's schedule allows for 3 hours of uninterrupted time in the prepared environment. So what happens over those 3 hours? With some wiggle room and a little bit of variation between individual environments, some pretty impressive stuff. Typically, the first half hour after the children arrive is like most liminal periods. It's a time when the children are getting used to being there, when they're no longer who they were before they came into the classroom, but they haven't quite yet settled into who they are when they're there. It's a time when children are transitioning from one environment to another, and they're settling in. It might include a little bit of wandering about the classroom, touching a lot of materials one by one as they walk around. Some children might use this time when they first arrive to kind of hold back and observe the classroom as it becomes more active. Others might enter the classroom every morning, ready to test every single boundary that had been set the day before. This first 30 minutes is a window within which the quiet, calming predictability of the teacher and the environment is paramount. However children respond, whether they're more active or more quiet, this is a time within which the child is leaving behind their outside environment, their relationships with their parents, with their families, anything that happened on the way to school that day, and they're transitioning to the ease of the prepared environment. You'll see teachers waiting quietly during this window, not intervening too quickly, and letting children work through that transition. The second half hour usually sees children choosing from a variety of materials around the classroom and generally choosing lessons that are a little bit easier for them, things that they've mastered already or that are really familiar. Observers are likely to see simpler lessons during this second half hour, repeated again and again and again. Children might be attentive to their work. They may really be there with their materials in front of them, or they may just be looking busy, repeating activities over and over, but keeping an eye on the rest of the classroom. Following this window of busyness, children will often demonstrate what Montessori observed and called false fatigue. It's exactly what it sounds like, a period of time during which children look like they're tired or they're bored when they're restlessly moving about the classroom. They tend to be clumsier with their bodies. They're less attentive with their minds. They might sort of stumble through the space. It's when things fall over, when the glasses break, when people fall down. In a traditional space, this would be when adults would say it is time to wrap up and go outside, and they'd hustle the children off to a new environment or a different activity. Montessorians, though, we know to sit on our hands and to wait until false fatigue resolves itself. Because while the classrooms are generally louder in this period and children can look as though they need an adult's intervention to find purposeful work, Montessorians know that there is a really deep integration of work that's just about to come, as though this is the time when children are using all of the restlessness, moving around the space, and sort of suffering through all of the chaos that's happening around them as a preparation for the very, very important work that's just about to come. And when children are allowed to remain in the classroom without interruption through that window of false fatigue, they emerge in the second hour of the work cycle, the most interesting work of the day, when they're seeking more rigorous, more challenging activities. They'll choose lessons that are harder for them. They'll choose lessons that require a longer attention span, or that might actually ask them to be more engaged than what they've done throughout the rest of the day. We observe then that children who have a shorter work cycle avoid the longer lessons that require more concentration. Indeed, we believe that they're not going to develop the same ability to attend that children in the longer work cycle do. The protection of the work cycle takes special importance in early childhood and elementary classrooms. Infant and toddler classrooms don't seem to benefit from the full 3 hours in the same way. They demonstrate a far wider variation in their own development, and they're unlikely to present the same ability to concentrate that older children will. In secondary, the work cycle is balanced by the highly social nature of the learners, and it can often take a back seat to the kind of small or full group, civically minded activities that kids in middle school are more interested in. In early childhood and elementary, though, you should observe Montessorians really protecting this work cycle, emphasizing, for example, that children arrive on time before the work cycle begins, and scheduling all the other stuff that we do during the day, recess and group time and specials like art or music or physical education, after that kind of sacred time of the 3-hour work cycle. In a full-day program, teachers may wait to offer advanced lessons to children until the afternoon, protecting the morning work cycle for truly uninterrupted child-initiated activity. While protecting that work cycle requires faith and self-restraint, Montessorians appreciate that the great work of the child is often that work that comes just at the end of the 3 hours. Just like we as adults may have to move through a lot of menial tasks before we're able to attend more closely to challenging work. If you think about how you spend your morning, you might actually sit down at your desk and do a whole lot of busy work before you really get into the deep work that you're going to do that day. The same thing happens for our children. And so we try to preserve that time for the child to meander through the space, both physically and intellectually, building towards the purposeful work that we know is perfectly matched to the child at the moment in that child's development and at the right moment in time. We just need to get out of their way.